click through. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You just give me the prompt and I'll do that for you.
Do that. So yeah, thanks for coming today, everyone. It's great to see so many people on the call. As Joe said, my name's Georgie and I'm one of the local funding officers based here in the Northwest. I work on our Reaching Communities programme and I cover Stockport and Tameside. I also work really closely with other funding officers based in Greater Manchester and more widely across the Northwest as well. So you've got Cheshire, Merseyside. And
video call.
Am I right? Are you all right to keep an eye on the chat, Joe, and just let me know if any questions come up as we go through? Is that okay?
Will do, yeah.
Yep. So if you go on to the next slide, please.
Okay.
So this is the overview of the agenda today and the main things that we're going to be covering this afternoon. So the main purpose of today's session is to help improve people's understanding of our core funding programmes and how to apply to them. We've recently returned to our main funding officers after a period of short-term emergency funding, including lottery and DCMS distribution. And we've made some slight changes as a result of sort of previous learning, but also learning that we've gathered since the pandemic began. A reminder that this isn't a call to funding and that the demand for our funding is higher than ever. So unfortunately, we have to say no to some really good proposals. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd start with a little bit about the National Lottery Community Fund. We're a non-departmental public body delivering public funds. So we work at arm's length from the government, although we are ultimately accountable to Parliament and the public for our activities. The income of all the lottery distributors comes from the sale of national lottery tickets. And of every £2 spent on a lottery ticket, about 56p goes towards good causes. The Community Fund is the largest of the lottery distributors, and we're responsible for distributing 40% of funds raised for good causes. And then as you can see here, I've just included some local context on how much is invested sort of on average into Greater Manchester every year and kind of how many projects and programmes that we're currently supporting across all of our funding programmes. Go on to the next slide, please, Joe. So our purpose, we support people and communities to thrive. We know that people understand what's needed in their communities better than anyone. So that's why we listen, collaborate and fund so that good things can happen. Next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about people in the lead. So we firmly believe that when people are in the lead, communities thrive. And that's why we want your funding proposals to demonstrate this clearly. Although there are sort of many principles which underpin this framework, we mainly consider three things. So this is the organisation people-led, is it strength-based, and how connected are they? I do actually have a link, a short video which explains people in the lead further, but I think what I might do is just sort of, because I'm conscious of time and there'll probably be questions as well, I'll share the link in the chat afterwards so people can just go away and have a look at that in their own time as well. And it's also on our website as well, so it's really easy to get hold of. Next slide, please. So we know that communities come in all shapes and sizes. You know, the National Lottery Community Fund is for everyone, and we need to ensure that we're reaching out to those that maybe don't think we are for them. We're a flexible funder, and we always have been, but in response to the pandemic, we're now even more flexible. It's not what we'll fund that makes us flexible, but our grant making processes have also been refreshed and redesigned to be more flexible for applicants. This allows our processes to adapt to the different types of funding that your organisation will need, particularly whilst responding to and recovering from the pandemic. Therefore, we're taking a proportionate approach to assessment and grant management based on the scale, size and complexity and the amount that you have requested, you know, recognising that it's not one size fits all process. So for example, we wouldn't expect the same level of detail and information to be provided by a group that wanted £50,000 over 1 year, as opposed to one that requests £500,000 over 5 years. It's your local funding officer's role to assist you with this, so that you know how much information we need regarding the level of planning and planning required and the amount of information to submit. Our approach remains conversational and relational as well, despite the lockdown restrictions. You know, if your project is a good idea and a good fit with our priorities, we talk to groups so that we can fully understand what you want from us. And if you're successful in being awarded funding, we'll keep talking to you about how you're progressing with the grant until you've spent all the money. Next slide, please. So we have 3 main funding priorities in England, which came out of discussions with our grant holders, stakeholders and organisations across the voluntary sector. We asked them where they think we add the most value and what's important for their communities. So these are stronger relationships, shared places and spaces, early action to prevent problems and tackle disadvantage. And these priorities are the same for all England funding programmes as well. Next slide, please. So alongside the 3 main England priorities, we'll continue to prioritise proposals which respond to the crisis. So we can support groups to continue to deliver activity responding to the immediate crisis or recovery, or groups who want to change, adapt and become more resilient to respond to future challenges. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about our main funding offers, Awards for All and Reaching Communities. So we've now reopened our main responsive funding programmes. And these are the same that operated before our short-term COVID emergency funds, with a few small changes. And all our programmes, open programmes, can be found on our website. What we are trying to do is encourage applicants to submit through the portal unless you have any specific communication requirements. If that is the case, then you can get in touch with us in our team inbox and we can help you to submit an application in an alternative way. Next slide. So Awards for All, this is our most popular programme in England, and this supports smaller grassroots organisations with grants from £300 up to £10,000 for 1 year. And this is managed by our team in Newcastle, so it's a more sort of central approach to it. Next slide. So Reaching Communities and Partnerships, this is managed by our regional teams, so the rest of the presentation is going to be more focused around this, because this is the programme that I work on. And this is aimed at organisations and communities with an aspiration to work on larger proposals. So with this programme, you can expect us to be flexible and responsive to your community's needs, you know, whether you need longer short-term funding, whether your request is for a particular activity or to create more fundamental change, or whether the funding is to support a single organisation or to bring organisations together. We can fund for the short term, but we also offer long-term support. We can support organisations with activity as well as core costs. We can fund the expansion of existing projects as well as the development of new ways of working. And we can cover costs for sharing learning and showing impact. So for example, if you want to demonstrate your community cohesion, if you want to develop your EDI, develop a lived experience leadership, or if you want to establish new partnerships with community stakeholders. And we can also support organisations to adjust to the new normal and focus on financial, strategic or operational planning and restructuring. Next slide, please. So this is a brief overview of the application process for Reaching Communities. So start with you going onto the website, checking your eligibility and then submitting an application. You'd then receive an unsuccessful email or a request for extra information. You'd then submit that extra information and you'd meet with your local funding officer. Obviously at the moment you can't meet face to face, but would either just do this over a phone call or a video conference, whatever you prefer. And then you'd confirm completion of your proposal and you'd have to wait a decision. With this, we work We work at your pace to submit. There are no deadlines or timeframes for you having to get extra pieces of information to us. We work completely at your pace. And if you need any extra support, or you have any questions, you can always get in touch with your funding officer at any stage of the process. Next slide. This is about some information about who can apply, and this is relevant to awards for all and reaching communities. So we welcome applications from groups supporting communities who we haven't been able to reach sufficiently previously, who traditionally have had poorer outcomes, and who will be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. So you can apply for organisation is a voluntary or community organisation, a registered charity, constituted group, a not-for-profit company or community interest company. Unfortunately, we can't accept applications from individuals or sole traders, companies that pay profits to directors, shareholders and members, organisations who are based outside the UK, or those who don't have at least 2 trustees who aren't married, in a civil partnership, long-term relationship, or living at the same address or related by blood, and one organisation can't apply on behalf of another. Next slide. So here are the questions included on the application form. So we'd ask you about what your organisation does, what you'd like to do with this funding, where your work will take place, how you'll involve your community, how your work fits with local activities, and who will benefit and what difference you'll make. And we'll also ask to see how much money you need and what you'll spend it on and how long you need the money for. And since our refresh, we've included a few new questions on the form as well. And this is about information about the number of staff and volunteers at the organisation, including the level of lived experience. And we also ask for some more information about the main and senior contact a lot earlier now as well. And then once you've completed and submitted the form, we'll be back in touch within 12 weeks. And this is either to let you know that you've been unsuccessful or to ask for more information. Next slide. So like I said, if your application is eligible and fits well with our priorities, we'll ask you for more information. Please develop your application. Like I said, please develop your application at your own pace and tell us about your proposal in your own format. As mentioned, there are no deadlines and your organisations are more than welcome to submit that in whatever format works best for them. It doesn't have to be a written document. Some people submit like short video clips or podcasts or evidence from their sort of working groups. It's completely up to you. You know, and if we've got any further questions, we'll let you know. We'll get back in touch if we feel like we need any more information or that you could do, like, sort of expand a little bit on a particular part of the proposal. And also the information that we ask for will depend on the complexity and scale of your proposal. And then once we have all the information we need, we'll then send you a declaration of clarification that you're happy for your proposal to be assessed. And then we aim to let you know our decision within 12 weeks of that. Next slide. So if your proposal is involving working with children, young people or vulnerable adults, you need to have a policy in place that explains how they'll be safe. And this needs to take into account the different ways of working as a result of COVID-19, particularly online activities. And it also needs to ensure that your policies, practices and staff training are all up to date. As you can see on this slide, the NSPCC and NCVO have a lot of really useful resources about safeguarding and setting up policies. So if you feel like you might need a little bit of support with that side of your work, then please do look on their website and have a look at the resources available. Next slide. So if you're successful with your application and are awarded funding, your funding officer will be in touch to do a grant setup with you. And this is when we sort of go over your terms and conditions, your official start dates and your official payment dates. And then we also talk about monitoring, because when you're successful and you have a project with us, you have to do annual monitoring, which is where you basically just tell us the story of the past year. So what went well, if there were challenges, if you've had to make any changes to the project, and obviously what you spent the money on as well. We offer the same level of flexibility in grant management as we do in our assessment, and we keep that conversational approach. So please be open and honest about the progress of your project. And then the next slide. So that's, like I said, that's pretty much it for this presentation. It was a sort of really short, brief overview of how reaching communities and wards for all work. But if you'd like to find out any more information on anything I've mentioned today, please do look at our website. You can call the advice line as well. The number for them is on this screen. Or you can just send us an email at our Northwest team inbox, and a local funding officer will get back in touch with you. If you're for Stockport, it's most likely me. But also, like, please work closely with Sector 3 as well. They can provide you a lot of support. And if it's an area on something that they might not be able to provide support with there, I'm more than happy for them to signpost you to myself. They've got my contact details and I'm happy for them to pass them on. That was kind of it for the presentation. Can go to questions if people have any. Like I said, I've not really been looking in the chat, so I don't know if there are any.
Nothing there as of yet, but I'm sure everybody will now either speak up or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, thanks, Georgie. That was really helpful. And yeah, I think we just open up the floor to questions, really.
Oh, is it Tina? Has got your hand up there?
Hello. How do I ensure that when I apply for a fund, I will be able to pay myself project management? Is it a matter of wording? Because I've been rejected a few times recently for managing a huge project, and I'm getting a pitiful return for it. So I don't know if it's the way that I'm saying it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the previous unsuccessful bids that you've had. Obviously, everything's sort of done by a case-by-case basis. But for me, if I was assessing a project or an idea that came in, the main things I want to see, and that we all want to see as a team at the lottery, is how closely does your idea and the project that you want to do, how closely does it align to our priorities? And what is the impact of that project going to be, as well as taking into account how people-led the project and the organisation are as well. They're sort of like the three main things that we really look at when we're assessing a project. And obviously, every sort of project and idea that you get in is different. So you can't just, there's not like a checklist when we're assessing ideas, because it is a case-by-case basis. But as a sort of main framework for getting something together, that they're the three main things that we look at.
Okay, thank you.
Just going to look in the chat now because I can see there's some coming in. So one from Sam saying, if you've had an Awards for All grant for a pilot and it's successful, is Reaching Communities grant the next step to support that project long term? And do you need to wait to full completion of pilot to apply for future years? Yeah, so we definitely have in the past seen projects sort of start in the Awards for All part of it, try something out new, and then they have developed onto Reaching Communities. That is definitely sort of the route. Sometimes we encourage applications, especially if it's a very new organisation or like you said, a pilot of something that you've never done before. But that's not always to say that because you've had Awards for All funding, you're guaranteed Reaching Communities funding. Unfortunately, no funding is ever guaranteed. And with regards to if you have to wait for the full completion of the pilot to then apply for more, yeah, we would probably want to see that project's finished and then see the evidence from that project, because obviously you can't really fully comment on the impact of it if it's not finished yet. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't start thinking about the next stages in the next application and getting some things together before this ends. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Yeah, she's nodding. I don't know if you can see her screen. And
yeah.
Claire, Claire Worthington's asking, if you are starting a new venture that can't start without funding, do you have any recommendations for setup? Example, she can't open a bank account until she exists.
Yeah, so it's just stuff like that, because usually you would want to, you kind of need to demonstrate kind of who you are and what you do. So I want to open a physical digital centre that helps people sort of learn online skills and does a lot of the stuff that I've already done as part of the online centres network. But if I just want off and say, right, I'm going to set up a bank account, I'm going to start as a business, it's just kind of, are there any recommendations in terms of sort of setting up? Because if you're only going to exist, and you can't really exist unless you secure some form of funding. So for example, if I was going to rent a unit, then that's cold hard cash that you need to know that you've got up front. And if you can't charge people to come along and do the thing you want to do, just that the cost of having the building is a thing in its own right. So it was just if there was any tips for new organisations that are wanting to sort of start in the right way.
Yeah, I'd say from like a funding point of view, if you're very new and like starting something, like I said, yeah, completely brand new, you've not got that sort of evidence of experience behind you with it. It's always
do as an individual, but not like at the moment I'm a sole trader. But yeah, if I open the digital centre, that wouldn't be just Claire as a village web company. That would be an entity in its own right, as a presumably as a CIC or something of that nature.
Yeah, I'd say like from a funding point of view, it's always better to sort of be realistic and kind of start off with the small pots of funding first, that are sometimes a bit easier to access than the larger pots of funding. So speaking from a reaching communities point of view, like I was saying to Tina a minute ago, a large part of what we use in our assessments is looking at the impacts of a project and what that impact has had and what it will have. Now, obviously, if you're a brand new sort of organisation and you've not really got that evidence of impact already, it'd probably be really hard for you to like be successful in getting those larger pots of funding. Whereas if you spend time putting the smaller applications in and slowly building up your experience of successful grants and successful project delivery and being able to evidence your impact, then that then puts you in a stronger position in the future for when you want to apply for the sort of bigger pots of funding.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. There is a question from Nicole. Our charity, she doesn't say which it is, but fulfills a community enabler role and is not people-led as such. Does this prevent us from being successful with the National Lottery? And we work in partnership with marginalised communities, training and supporting them to manage their own community orchard. And she's put now the orchard project.
Yeah, so like I was saying in the presentation, people in the lead and how people led a project or an organisation is a really big thing that we take into consideration when assessing projects. There will be some projects that we fund that people in the lead might not be as strong as others, but they might be really strong in other parts of their work. So in terms of their impact or their work with marginalised communities, or sort of doing a project that is really filling the gaps, that there's nothing else of that sort already being delivered. Again, like I said, it is on that case by case basis, but we do turn down a lot of projects for not being people led enough. But like I said, it's hard to kind of give you a full yes or no if you'd be successful about obviously hearing the context of the work you do and what you'd be applying for.
Yeah, and people led, Georgie, I'm guessing it's not necessarily about the staff, you know, it's about how you engage and get people's voices of lived experience. So it could be that you have people on your board of trustees that is able to give that insight. It may be that you do a lot of engagement work, you've done some research, you've got focus groups, etc. So you can, that all helps, doesn't it, to kind of demonstrate the people's voice in the organisation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. And it's almost so hard to define people in the lead because it is so broad and there's so much to it. But like you just said, Joe, all those things are kind of spot on and there are different aspects to it. What I'll do is I'll grab that link that I was talking about in the presentation. And I'll
Hey, Claire, you've not missed much. We just I'll share the slides after this anyway, and we've recorded it. So but yeah, we're just entering the bit that probably you need some support on, which is the questions to Georgie directly around certain processes. So we'll pick that up now for you.
Yeah. So Claire from ALS is asking, if you've had the 6-month COVID grant, can you then get the Awards for All fund?
Yeah, you can. There's nothing stopping you. If you've had DCMS funding or 6 months COVID funding, you're completely eligible to apply for our other funding programs. Yeah.
And Nick's just picked up on that point. Can we explain people led?
Yeah.
Did that help, Nick? Did that answer the question, or?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. It's like we're saying, it's about how people are involved in the work that you do, whether that's in the projects that you deliver or you as an organization in general. But like I said, I've shared a link on this chat, which is a video for people in the lead and kind of explains a little bit more what we mean by it. So like I said, there are so many parts to it. You can't always give it like a black and white definition.
Yeah, and like you say, it's you're very keen on it being conversational. So I would stress to anybody who's putting together a bid to reaching communities, it does take some time and resource to do that. So please use Sector 3 as a sounding board or a critical friend or somebody just to run stuff by. We've seen quite a few successful applications in Stockport, and it's been great to know that they've come to us and we've had a chance to give them give some feedback before it goes in kind of cold, as it were. So yeah, just keep on asking us, and George is available too, and I can always collate questions that you might have after and take those back to Georgie and get an answer from her.
Yeah, that's good. And I kind of, one thing I'd stress as well is, like, even if you come around to reaching communities and you submit something, it's not like it's going into this abyss that you're never going to see it again and you're going to get a yes or no from it. If I've got any questions, or if anyone on my team's got any questions that we feel could be answered by a conversation, we just get back in touch with you and we just ask you to elaborate on it a little bit more, or just confirm our understanding of something. It's never going to just be taken as it is and then taken to a panel and decided on there and then. If we're ever confused or, like I said, need something explaining more, we'll just get in touch.
And that might well lead on to Wendy's question, because I'm not sure where you're from, Wendy, but Wendy's said that she's recently been turned down. She thinks she understands that she can reapply. As she's looking for core funding, it's difficult to assess the total impact this might have numbers wise. We're not open at the moment. We are relying on what we can do on the telephone and by email or mail in the community.
Yeah, was that for Awards for All, Wendy, or was it for reaching communities? Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Right, it was the reaching communities. Yeah, it's I'm in Compstal in the Stockport area. But I'm not quite sure what I was wrong with the application or what I need to do in order to make it more a better application in order to successful, really.
Yeah, if you want, Wendy, I can remember your application now. We can have arrange for a time for me and you to talk about this directly to your proposal, because like I said, it's more of a personal sort of approach, like for your proposal rather than sort of
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll email you afterwards and we can book in a phone call if you want. We can
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Is there any more questions?
Hi, can I ask a quick question? It's Amanda from Pure Innovations. Hi, Georgie.
Hi.
Does it come to a disadvantage at all if we've just had some grant income of about £10,000, which allows us to do a small element of a project that we'd like to submit to reaching communities? Does that give us a disadvantage at all because we're using some additional money at the moment?
No, not at all. If anything, it's good to see that you're getting investments from other places, because it shows the value of your work and that other people believe in it.
Well, so as long as we're able to demonstrate what our learning is from that and how we're going to use that money for that element and then reaching communities to add value and things, that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you.
Right, and can you go in for straight ahead for reaching communities without, could you pass go? Could you pass the awards for all? Or would you prefer an organisation to sort of start there and build up?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because it all depends on that organisation. Like I was saying earlier, if you're brand new, a really new organisation and don't have a lot of grant management experience, then it is always best to start off small, because it's just helping you build the evidence and that you can manage pots of money. And that might not always be with awards for, it might be with other smaller funders. To then come in for reaching communities, but we definitely fund loads of organisations that might not have ever had an awards for all before.
Yeah,
and it all really depends on you as an organisation and what you're looking to do, really.
And I think, you know, in the past, lottery money funding, I might be wrong, but it was kind of project and finding projects that were investable. But obviously with COVID, you're not expecting people to come up with brand new ideas, are you? You're very much funding those that are looking to continue work and need some help to keep going. Is that right?
We're looking for all of those things, so you can apply if it's something completely new. We are encouraging people to do that if that's what they feel is right for their community and the right time to be doing it. But equally you can just apply for an existing project, or if you just need to cover your core costs, you know, like to pay your rent, to pay your bills, to pay your core staff team. It's that real variety and sort of being flexible in what we can fund. Or if you're looking for funding to just like develop the organisation, like you said, COVID would have had a massive impact on people's finances. So if people are looking to sort of almost, you know, look to the future and put together a new sort of financial plan for the next 2 or 3 years, we can help with those types of costs as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Any other questions?
There's nothing else in the chat and I can't see anybody's hands up. So if anyone doesn't know how to do either of those things and just wants to holler, feel free. No.
Nope, can't see any more.
You've obviously done a good job, Georgie, of explaining.
Either that or everyone's just really confused. I hope it was helpful. And like I was saying in the presentation, if anyone's got any questions that they don't really want to speak to in front of everyone on the call, like I'm happy for sector 3 to put you in touch with me and we can have like a private conversation if that's what you'd prefer.
Yeah, and I've just put up some details there. So yes, there is other funding out there as well, like Georgie said, that might be better for you at whatever stage you're at. Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
What's happened there?
Just in case you forgot, there's lots of arrows to remind you.
That's very weird. It's never done that before. I've not touched anything, honestly. So yeah, the Sector 3's website's really, it's got lots of funding advice and current funding rounds that are open on there. And if you do want some friendly support and guidance on applying for funding, then do get in touch with us. And we're always promoting things via our Twitter, so please go on there if you're a Twitterer. And then you can sign up to our bulletin as well to get kind of up-to-date news on funding and other opportunities for the sector. So I'd strongly recommend you sign up to the bulletin to keep in the know.
Yeah, and also just a reminder that the Stockport Food Fund closes on Monday at 12 o'clock. So if you've got a food related project and you're interested in applying, details are on our Sector 3 website. So there's a small micro funding pot up for 1,000 and under, and a medium term grant pot for over 1,000. It's quite a quick turnaround, so we're hoping to make decisions quite quickly about that. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I think I don't know what's happened to my PowerPoint there, but thank you everyone for your contributions and your questions, because they were really good ones, I think, that have helped others on the call. And thank you to Georgie for coming along today, and also for the offer of continued support for Stockport organisations to access funding. So we'll see you all soon. Good luck with it all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.